So, good morning again. Let's start our second talk of this morning session. It is my pleasure to introduce Simon Felipe Cobre da Silva. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you.
So, Simon is an experimental physicist and researcher in the Gleb Watagin Institute of Physics at the State University of Campinas. Working in the field of quantum materials and quantum technologies, he earned his bachelor's degree, master's degree, and PhD in physics from the Federal University of Viçosa, Minas Gerais. During his doctoral studies, he conducted research at the Brazilian Nanotechnology National Lab, focusing on molecular beam epitaxy and semiconductor nanostructures. From 2017 to 2024, he carried out postdoctoral research at the Johannes Kepler University in Linz. As a member of the group led by Armando Rastelli, that he was responsible for the 3-5 molecular beam system and developed single photon and entangled photon sources based on semiconductor quantum dots. In 2024, he returned to Brazil and was awarded a young investigator grant from the São Paulo Research Foundation to develop single photon sources operating at the telecommunication wavelengths. His research interests include molecular beam epitaxy, semiconductor quantum dots, single and entangled photon emission, integrated photonics, and quantum technologies for quantum communication. So, Simon, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning. Thank you very much first for the organization that give me the opportunity to present my work here. Unfortunately, I work with molecular beam epitaxy for 10 years, but I never had the opportunity to work with quantum rings. But maybe in the next edition, if you invite me again, maybe we can have a working quantum rings. The talk of my work will be molecular beam epitaxy for quantum dots for generate quantum light source. Okay, as I said, I really like to work with molecular beam epitaxy. I have been doing this for the last 10 years. And this is a ChatGPT picture. I asked them to generate this. Now I'm start to be a big fan of these nice images from ChatGPT. But if you see some errors, maybe it's because of this. I learned to grow samples with this guy here. Somebody know who is this guy? Maybe Jorge? No, I'm joking. This was in an international conference, molecular beam epitaxy, that I went in 2014 when I was still a PhD student. This is Ipson Cho, that is considered one of the fathers of the technique. And besides of the main problems that we have here in Brazil, work with molecular beam epitaxy here is quite tough, because I don't know if you know what is MBE means. Sometimes we say that MBE means most broken equipment, because several times we have to encounter some difficulties. And in general, when I was in Europe, it was much better, because I was in Austria, and if we have a problem with the machine, it's a small problem, I just take the telephone, call the company, in 1 or 2 days, the repair party was arriving, and I can continue my work. But here in Brazil, it's more difficult. In general, when we have a small problem, if we have money to buy the repair part, this will take how long? 6 months? Or a year? But besides of this, I really like to join MBE, because when you grow high quality samples, it's open the opportunity to make a lot of collaborations. And it's really nice when somebody come to you and say, oh, I need a sample with this specific characteristics. Can you grow this for me? Yes, let's try. And after 6 months, the guy came, oh, we have nice results. Your sample was really good. And this gives you the opportunity to make a lot of nice friends, to travel the world. And this is the reason that besides of the many problems that we have, I'm doing, again, a stupid step. I'm buying a new MBE to work here in Brazil. Another advantage of the MBE is that it's possible almost grow everything. You can grow different kind of semiconductors, 3-5, like gallium arsenide, aluminum arsenide, gallium antimonide, 2,6 compounds, or one of the most traditional group 4 elements like silicon and germanium. Also, there is some people now that are working hard in growing oxide semiconductors. And if you control the growth parameters, temperature, or whatever, you can get very different low dimension structures. In the beginning, the people was doing a lot of quantum wells and also with super lattices in the beginning of the technique. But a lot of people are doing also quantum wires. I was doing the last 10 years quantum dots, and here the people are expert in quantum rings. And also there is this topic that is about nanomembranes. You also can grow, let's say, a sacrificial layer about the aluminum arsenide, growing let's say, a gallium arsenide layer on the top of the sacrificial layer, and you can remove the sacrificial layer and transfer these nanomembranes, for example, a flexible substrate, and try to do some electronics with this. Also, the people are doing a lot of now topological insulators, semi-metals or van der Waals heterostructures, and also magnetic materials that we have a big fan here of manganese. This is also another ChatGPT generate image. Here I fight with ChatGPT. I ask him to make an image about the Strans-Kastranov growth, but I ask him to keep the wetting layer, but he not understand what is a Strans-Kastranov growth very well. The nice thing of this kind of, I will not enter in explain more about Strans-Kastranov or how it's grow, because he already did quite good work on Monday. Yeah? But basically, when you go for a textbook in literature, the first example that you see talking about quantum dots is the Strans-Kastranov indium arsenide quantum dots. And the nice thing about this dot is that if you change the growth parameter or using some technique, you can change the optical characteristics of the emission of these quantum dots. For example, this traditional Strans-Kastranov, you can get an emission around the 1.1 or 1.3 microns. But another one that Jorge showed, it's what I named partial capping annealing indium arsenide quantum dots. That basically you grow indium arsenide quantum dot. After this, you can deposit 2 nanometers of gallium arsenide, let's say in 500 degrees. If you ramp the temperature to, let's say, 600 degrees, this cap here, he will evaporate. And with this, you can manage to shift the emission from 1.2, 1.1 to 900 nanometers. And this is what the people, like companies like Quandela and Spare Quantum that selling single photon source are using now in the market. Another kind of method that is basically 2 people that are doing this is the group of Kai Müller and Peter Michler. It's about this pseudomorphic buffer layer. Basically, they start with indium gallium arsenide layer with something like around 20% content of indium, and they grow until, let's say, 36%. After this, they decrease the percent, and they grow these indium arsenide quantum dots on the top of this buffer layer. And with this, they managed to reach, let's say, 1.3 or 1.5 microns for the quantum dot emission. And also another way that you can do, it's growing not in gallium arsenide substrates, but in indium phosphide substrates. With this, you can also engineer the quantum dot emission of these quantum dots. Okay, here everybody is an expert in droplet epitaxy, and basically, you can deposit a 3 element of the group 3 on the top of, let's say, gallium arsenide. This element will form droplets on the surface, and if you control the exposure of these droplets to elements of the group 5, let's say arsenic, and or control the temperature of the substrate, you can form these gallium arsenide droplet etching quantum dots. Or if you control again or change the parameters, you can also start to etching the substrate, and you can make nano rings, or what I was working the last 7 years with, what we named droplet etching quantum dots. Okay, this is another picture from Jorge. You was in the group that did this Okay. The first demonstrate what the people are using now in indium arsenide quantum dots or semiconductor quantum dots is to generate single photon sources. And the first one that demonstrated this in 2000, as Jorge already showed, was Dr. Peter Michel, that now is in Munich. And basically, what the group of Pfeiffer did was embedded indium arsenide quantum dots inside these microdisks, and they demonstrated that these indium arsenide quantum dots can generate deterministic photons. Here is the correlation image. I will explain more about this in the next slide. Basically, what we are trying to do, if you're using a correlation setup, you can calculate what we namely G2, and this G2 for single photon source will give you the probability of you emitting more than one photon per time. And basically, by looking at the photon statistics, we can describe this quantum light source, these light sources, in three different groups. The first one, if it's this G2, it's below, let's say, if its G2 value is equal 0, we will say that this is a kind of anti-bunching behavior. This means that every time that you press a button, only one photon will come from this light source. And generally, this is for ideal sources like G2 equals 0, but in general, we have a lot of problems with these quantum dots. And if it's G2, it's below 0.5, we are still described as an anti-bunching light source. Another light source that we know is it's the laser that can produce coherent light, but you also have the chance of producing more than one photon per time. And in general, when you measure this G2, you have some values around 1. And the last one is the thermal, this incandescent light. He put here was also ChatGPT LED, but forget about this LED. The incandescent light, you have this kind of behavior. If you calculate the G2, it will be more than 1, and you will produce like a kind of bunch lights. And this means that you will get more than one photon per time with these incandescent lights. But for what's the reason that you want to use these kind of single photon sources? In general, today there is a big research field that is using these single photon sources to produce qubits or in quantum key distribution experiments. This means in quantum technologies. And today there is the best method to produce these single photon sources. There is still a lot of research ongoing, and they are trying to improve this quantum light source or making a new kind of quantum light source. And the traditional ones that you see everywhere, it's the semiconductor quantum dots, or you can use also trap ions, or color centers in silicon carbide PIN devices. And the traditional one that people was doing a lot of research is using spontaneous parametric down conversion sources. As I said, there is no best method. Some methods have some advantage, another ones have disadvantage. For example, you can also use attenuate lasers to produce single photon source, but these attenuate lasers, you cannot produce on-demand photons. Also, the brightness in general, when you do these photon correlation measurements with these single photons, it's very nice if you have sources with high brightness. And also, these attenuate lasers give you high brightness, but for, let's say, quantum communication, they not give you, for example, entangled photons. And parametric down conversion also cannot produce on-demand photons, but the purity that I will talk about later is also it's also higher, and the indistinguishability is higher, and they can produce entangled photons. This is the only problem of this source is that if you want to increase the brightness of them, this is following a Poisson statistics, and you also increase the chance of generate more than one photon per time. And also, we have what I was doing for the last years, the semiconductor quantum dots that can give you on-demand photons. The purity is very high. The indistinguishability is also very high. The brightness is higher, and also they give you entangled photons. Looks like perfect, but it's not like perfect like this. For example, parametric down conversions have the advantage that you can work in room temperature, but semiconductor quantum dots, you also have to to work in let's say, low temperature, let's say 10 kelvins. Okay, for this kind of purpose of quantum communication, one of the biggest experimental that was done in the last year was from the group of Jiang Pan. Jiang Pan, it's a Chinese researcher in the field of quantum communication. He was working, if I'm not wrong, as a PhD student in the group of Anton Zeilinger, and he is the second author of this paper that gives Zeilinger the Nobel Prize about quantum teleportation. In 2020, his group demonstrated that it's possible to use spontaneous parametric down conversions to generate a quantum key and distribute this quantum key over 1,000 kilometers. In this kind of experiment, they use a kind of hybrid infrastructure that on the Earth they use telescopes and they connect with a satellite. Let me just The only problem of this spontaneous parametric down conversion is what I said. In general, for this kind of experiment, it's very desirable that you get a lot of photons from your source. But if you try to increase the brightness of the source, you also have increase the probability of getting two entangled photon pairs. And this is very bad because this will increase the errors in your experiment. Think about this. In the last years, what the people are trying to do is using molecular beam epitaxy to grow solid-state single photon source. And this is just some figures of another presentation, but this is the 35 MBE that I was responsible in Linz. And this is just atomic force microscope of gallium arsenide on gallium arsenide. I just keep this image because I really like to see the two-dimensional terrazos when you grow gallium arsenide. And basically what I was doing the last years was using molecular beam epitaxy to grow solid-state quantum dots. What's the advantage of this source? There's several advantages. They are easy to integrate in optoelectronic device. Because of the lifetime is very short, they can, if you make a device, they can operate in high rates. And the most important, they can generate entangled photon pairs. And this is the method that you can generate entangled photon pairs. First, you can using excitation method to promote two electrons from the valence band to the conduction band. And these electrons will be attracted for the holes in the valence band, and you will form a pair that you name bi-exciton state. This is the energy level of this bi-exciton state. And eventually, one of these electrons will decay and generate a photon. Again, after some time, they will generate another photon. And if this energy level here, that is the neutral exciton, is indistinguishable, these two photons will be entangled in a polarization state. This is what we named bi-exciton radiative decay, cascade. Okay, what people are doing a lot, and you have commercial sources, is single photon source for indium arsenide quantum dots. But there is a lot of disadvantages of these indium arsenide quantum dots. First, they have a high speed emission wavelength. This means that if you see here, the quantum dots will have the same amount of, let's say, size or indium content inside. They will emit in different wavelengths. And this is bad because some experiments, if you want to find two quantum dots with the same optical characteristics, using indium arsenide will be a very tough challenge. And also, one of the biggest problems is the high fine structure splitting. Basically, because of the strain and piezoelectric effects, in general, this neutral exciton energy level will be suffer a splitting. And this splitting, sometimes for this indium arsenide quantum dot, it's so big that you can kill the entanglement of the two photons that emitted. And another disadvantage of this is that in general, it's very hard to control the surface density in these quantum dots. And generally, you have to find a way of isolate a single photon source, a single quantum dot on the sample to measure them. And the control the emission wavelength. As I showed in the first slide, it's possible to control the emission wavelength, but there is another method that I was showing that is much easier to do. And the method that I was doing in the last years was combining this gallium arsenide, aluminum gallium arsenide quantum dots with what we namely local droplet etching. Basically, the first advantage of this method is that before I said that because of the strain, you can also degrade the entangled properties of the indium arsenide quantum dots. And with this system, we have almost no strain because the lattice parameter of the gallium arsenide and the aluminum gallium arsenide is almost the same. And basically, here is the method. It's very related with the droplet etching epitaxy. First, we can start growing a bottle barrier of aluminum gallium arsenide. In the second step, we close all the cells. And in this step, it's really nice when you have a cryopump, because when you want to deposit in the next step the aluminum, it's very nice if you have removed all the arsenic from the chamber for not forming aluminum arsenide layer. And in this next step, we deposit pure aluminum. This aluminum will form droplets on the surface, like the droplet etching epitaxy. But if you control the arsenic background, if you change this, like increasing a little, instantly of crystallize these droplets, the droplets start to etching the all gas surface. And with this, we can make these nanoholes. And after making these nanoholes, we can fill these nanoholes with gallium arsenide. And the next steps, close the all gas barrier, and we will be able to confine the electrons inside these nanoholes, and this will be our droplet etching quantum dots. The advantage of this method is that you can change the emission wavelength from, let's say, 680 to, with gallium arsenide to, let's say, 850 nanometers by only changing the thickness of this layer here, of this gallium arsenide. That is much easier than the traditional indium arsenide quantum dots. And another advantage is that if you see here, the density that you get with this with this technique, it's very low, what makes possible to very easy isolate a quantum dot that is not good for the cross-section tunneling measurements from pole. Okay, if you compare here with the other methods, you see this is gallium arsenide quantum dots. This is a scale of 5 by 5 microns, and you have basically 3, 6, 7 quantum dots on the surface. This is the nanoholes, but it's how I count these quantum dots when I grow this, some test samples. If you compare to the Strans-Castronovo indium arsenide, this is, let's say, 1 micron per 1 micron, and have almost more dots than the gallium arsenide quantum dot. And this is, you see, the density is very high. And for single photon sources, when you want to isolate a quantum dot, it's much better if you have very low density like the gallium arsenide quantum dots. Okay, this is the spectrum of isolate gallium arsenide quantum dots above band excitations. And when you use above band excitations, you can see a lot of charge carriers like the neutral exciton, the bi-exciton, trions. You see azul in the spectrum. But if you use 2-photon excitation, you can make the spectrum more clean, and you can just see the neutral exciton and the bi-exciton state. Again, here in this gallium arsenide quantum dots, you also have the splitting of the neutral exciton energy level. But this time, this is not comes from the strain, because we are almost strain-free here, but it's coming from the symmetry of the confined potential. If these nanoholes are very symmetric, you can grow really small fine structure splitting quantum dots in the order of 2.5 microelectrovolts. And this is, if you think about it, this is smaller than the line width of these quantum dots, what make these quantum dots, what we say, entangle ready for quantum communication applications. And another advantage of this gallium arsenide quantum dots is that you can control the emission wavelength and make a very narrow emission distribution in wavelength. It's what is very nice, because if you want to try to find 2 quantum dots with the same optical properties, it's not very difficult as in the indium arsenide system. Okay, when you started to develop or improving this gallium arsenide quantum dots for single or any kind of single photon source, there are some characteristics that you want to look. The first one is the single photon purity that you use. In general, you use a Hahn-Browning twist experiment setup that is basically a 50 by 50 beam splitter, 2 detectors, and a correlation electronics. This was the same measurement that the Peter Lodo did in this famous experiment in the Nature. And basically what we are looking here is the probability that in 0 time delay that one photon reach the detector. If this is a real single photon source, you see that only one photon will reach the detector. You will not see a correlation in this 0 time delay. Okay, and in 2018, we developed we grow one kind of gallium arsenide quantum dots, and we demonstrate that this G2, it's around 10 to the minus 5 values. This is one of the best values that you can find among solid state sources. This means that we don't have so much probability of getting 2 photons when you press a button if you make a device with this gallium arsenide quantum dots. Okay, the second characteristic that we look is the indistinguishability of these quantum dots. Let's say if you, in 2020, the group of Richard Warburton, that is from Basel in Germany, they took one of these gallium arsenide quantum dots and they embedded inside a PIN device. With this, they managed to control the environment charge around the quantum dot, and they show that they can get line width almost a resolution limit. And with this kind of samples, they have 2 samples, they put in 2 different cryostats, and they did some Raman interference visibility. And they demonstrate that they can reach values around 93%, that is really good values. And also, this kind of samples was a first test. There's a lot of improvement to get best values. And basically what this indistinguishability is giving us, it's how looks like, how one photon looks similar to the other. If it's 100%, this means that all the optical characteristics are the same. Okay, the third thing that we are looking is the entangled fidelity that is measuring by doing some quantum tomography. In general, when we already know that these gallium arsenide quantum dots generate a state that it's a Bell state, the PC+. And generally, this fidelity, you want to measure what your experimental is giving you compared to what we are expecting. This means we have a Bell state, and we measure to see how close it is from what we are expecting. And for this gallium arsenide quantum dots in 2021, we demonstrate that this value is almost 99%. And this fidelity is related with, let's say, with some quantum communication experiments. This means that you get high fidelity, means that you decrease the errors that can be generated during this kind of experiments. Okay, the last thing that we check is the brightness. This is still an important field that people are trying to develop new kind of cavities because you want to extract more photons of these gallium arsenide quantum dots. Because of the refract index of these materials that we use, gallium arsenide, aluminum gallium arsenide, only 2% of the photons that is emitted from the gallium arsenide quantum dots will be collected on the objective outside of the sample. And the rest of the 98% will be lost by total internal reflection. Thinking about this to try to increase the structure efficiency, there is a lot of methods that we can use. The first one is the most simple one, that is using disparate Bragg reflectors. Basically, this is the simple ones because you can grow these mirrors in situ during the epitaxial growth of the sample, and you don't have to do any kind of device, not any kind of device or any kind of development to get. And basically what you do, you grow these DBR pairs, and to increase the extraction efficiency, you can also use the solid immersion lens to put on the top of the sample, and with this you can increase the extraction efficiency to 20%. But there is another groups, like the group of Quandel in France, that they are selling single photon source based in this kind of micropillars. And with this, they claim that they can get between 40 and 60% of extraction efficiency. And another important result that was done in 2021, again by the group of Richard Warburton, was this kind of open cavity. Basically, they grow DBR's mills on the bottom of the sample. They grow the quantum dot sample, but for the top mill, they use dielectric DBRs. And basically, what they do, they put the sample inside the cryostat. They have a dielectric mill that they can move and they can couple with the quantum dots. With this kind of approach, they reach, let's say, almost 60% of extraction efficiency. And the last approach that the people was doing, it's done by the group of Peter Lodell. They was working a lot with this, and now they are selling in his company Spare Quantum, is that using waveguides. And with these waveguides, they managed to get some B factors around 92%. That basically just B factors give you how much you can couple the light of these quantum dots to the cavity, to the waveguide. Okay, and the last approach is what we say, this is plasmonic cavity, that the name is Buside structures. And in 2019, the group of Jin Liu, this is also a Chinese research, they approached us to develop this kind of heterostructures, and he demonstrated in 2019 that with this kind of cavity, he can increase the extraction efficiency for 85%. And what the people are really trying to do a lot now is using this Buside structure, because if you see here, this blue line is the collection efficiency. It's very broad, and you can get, let's say, around the 89% of extraction efficiency. And also the nice thing of this is, sometimes, if you have small changes in the temperature during this droplet etching epitaxy, you can shift the emission wavelength of the quantum dots. But with this broadband cavity, if this happens, you still can get high extraction efficiency. And the last characteristics of this cavity is that you have a Purcell factor that can be around 50 and 12 times. This means that with this Purcell factor, you can decrease the decay time of this quantum dot source, and you can also, with this, improve the indistinguishability of these photons. But the problem of this kind of approach is that it's very time-consuming, because when you grow this gallium arsenide quantum dot, it's a self-assembly process, and you need to mapping where is the quantum dots before doing the Buside ring structures. For doing this, we need a high resolution setup. That is basically what you can do is you take a blue LED and a CMOS camera, you shine the quantum dots in low temperature with the blue LED, and you capture how the quantum dots emitting light. If you have some markers, you can positioning and save the position of these quantum dots. And the nice thing of this kind of approach is that in general, you not do this randomly. First we measure the quantum dot by photoluminescence. We check if this quantum dot have a good optical quality. Let's say if the fine structure split is small or the line width is small. And after check this, we save the position. And after saving the position, you can do the Buside structure around the quantum dot. Generally, they give this work for the master students that just starting the group, because it's really a bad timing process. Okay, I will not enter in details because there is no much time. No, but we have a lot of time. But it's using this gallium arsenide quantum dot was already demonstrated that it's possible to use this source for quantum key distribution. We have 3 different experiments that was done. The first two ones was in 2021. Basically was done in the group of Armando Rastelli, that was, and also in the group of Rinaldo Trota in Sapienza University. Why 2021? In the truth, these 2 experiments was done with the same sample. But in this time, Rinaldo Trota was just moving from Linz to Sapienza University, and there was a competition between Linz and Sapienza University to see who done the experiment first. And in the end, they did in the same time, and they published in different magazines in the same time. But the message of this is basically these gallium arsenide quantum dots have a good optical quality that you can use for quantum key distribution. In 2023, before I come back to Brazil, the only problem, I forgot to say, the only problem of this gallium arsenide quantum dots is that the emission wavelength is restricted to the gallium arsenide band gap. That is around, the restriction of this quantum dots is around 815 nanometers. Thinking about this, in 2023, before coming back to Brazil, I developed a new kind of single photon source. We just published this paper in the beginning of the year in the Nano Letters that I use indium gallium arsenide and droplet etching to extend the emission wavelength for, let's say, 920 nanometers. Why I did this? Because this kind of companies, Quandela and Spare Quantum, are selling sources in this range. And I was thinking, should it possible to extending this method to 920 and get the same optical quality of the gallium arsenide quantum dots? And basically what I did was very simple. Instead of filling these nano holes with gallium arsenide, I include the indium on the structure. The people before was trying to do this, but what they was doing was, instead of using gallium, they was trying to fill in these nano holes with indium arsenide. And what was happening was the indium was diffusing to inside the nano hole and forming a Strans-Kastranov indium arsenide quantum dots. And you have basically two kind of methods, was like a indium arsenide Strans-Kastranov inside the nano hole and was covered inside the nano hole. And the optical quality for this kind of approach was not good. And what I did, maybe I can using aluminum gallium arsenide and deposit a material that is below the critical thickness of the indium arsenide Strans-Kastranov formation. And this way I did this, and I was able to really fill these nano holes with gas, not with indium arsenide. And here is just the image setup that we did to see the density. And this is atomic force microscope showing how it looks like the nano hole after the filling. Basically, what I was measuring was here in the sample. And this is a big scan that I did. And each of these small spots here is the nano hole after filling, but you don't have the Strans-Kastranov growth formation. With this, I managed to, by changing the indium concentration inside the nano holes, I managed to extend the emission wavelength to around, let's say, 900. This is 895, but I can find also quantum dots in 920 nanometers. What is the advantage of this with the Strans-Kastranov? It's very easily to get a smaller final structure splitting, and in generally, in this kind of field, the people are trying to do some quantum memory using cesium atoms. And cesium atoms, there's two transitions, that one is in 8 and 95 nanometers, that is possible to use also with Strans-Kastranov. And also there is a transition that I don't remember, it's 852 or 854, but this kind of transition here was blocked before with indium arsenide quantum dots, because here, for this Strans-Kastranov, you have the wetting layer. And for this local droplet etching, we don't have anymore this wetting layer. And also, there are some papers from the group of Richard Warbardo that they demonstrate that the wetting layer can degrade the quantum characteristics of the indium arsenide Strans-Kastranov quantum dots. In this kind of approach, we don't have this problem anymore. Also, another advantage is that, in general, as you know, the lifetime of this indium arsenide quantum dots is in the order of 1 nanosecond, but for the droplet etching method, this is almost 1/3 of the time. And this is really nice because you can operate in gigahertz. If you put this kind of quantum dots in a cavity, you can make a device that can operate in gigahertz. And also with this lower lifetime, we improve the photon indistinguishability. And here is also a correlation measurement that we did to prove that this was a single photon source. If you compare this value, this value is very small, but it's much bigger than the gallium arsenide quantum dots. But this because we don't have the correct setup for measuring this wavelength, and you see that we still have a laser that was coming from the excitation. This means that we can very easily improve this value of G2. Okay, again, why I did this kind of things? Because of basically, we have a collaborator that was looking for a sample in 920, and because Quandela and Spare Quantum are selling this kind of single photon source. by using Strans-Castranov. I believe that this paper was published in January. I believe in the future this kind of companies will shift this, the use of this Strans-Castranov for these new quantum dots because the optical quality is much better for this kind of applications. And also Quandela is also have now the 12 qubits quantum computer that is based in the Strans-Castranov. And what Professor Euclides will ask me, what this quantum computer solved, and I was looking, and they solved nothing for now. But they claim that they have this 12 qubits computer. The main issue of this quantum dot is that even with this approach that I just show you, the emission wavelength is restricted to, let's say, 920 nanometers. But if you want to do a real quantum communication channel, it will be very nice if you can use the optical fiber infrastructure around the world. But if you look for this graph of attenuation, here with this local droplet etching quantum dots, we are in the first window, where the attenuation is very, very high compared to the telecom frequency. And what the people is trying to develop in Europe now, at least in the groups that I know, it's a source that have the nice, good optical quality as the droplet etching quantum dots, but that emitting telecom wavelength. In this direction, when I come back to Brazil, I have a bit lucky that the FAPESP, that the agents for research in São Paulo, they created this QTIA program that is an initiative for quantum technology applications in Brazil. And they gave 5 projects of $1 million, and I got one. And basically what I promised to them was using molecular beam epitaxy and droplet etching to grow a single photon source that emitting telecom frequency. And this is the chamber that I bought. This is from MBE Components. It's a German company. And last March, I traveled to Warnestad in Germany, and we did the factory test. This is me. I'm a little fat here, but this will improve in the future. This is Dr. Abel, that is the owner of the company. He's very famous in the quantum dot, not in the quantum dot, but in the molecular beam epitaxy community. And this is Christopher Denick, that was my PhD advisor, that is also helping me in Unicamp. Okay, basically here, what I have done in the last months is just trying to buy things and fix the lab. This is the lab that is almost ready for receiving the MBE. The MBE arrived here in Brazil 20 days ago. Here's the picture of the MBE. I opened the box because, you know, here in Brazil, we have some problems that sometimes you buy in Amazon, and instead of getting the product, you get bricks inside the box. And I was thinking, let me see if it's not bricks inside, it's my MBE, and was done. It's the MBE. Okay, basically what I want to do is very simple. What I promised to FAPESP is, I have a lot of experience in droplet etching using gallium arsenide and aluminum arsenide system, and basically what I want is just transfer my experience from this gallium arsenide system to the gallium antimonide, aluminum antimonide system. Another advantage of this system is that here we just have the gallium arsenide substrate, but here we can also use indium arsenide substrates to grow these unstrained quantum dots. And also because of the smaller band gap of this system, I hope that I will be able to reach the telecom frequency with this new single photon source that I want to grow. And basically, in my project, I promise a lot of things because you cannot promise. So if you promise just 2 things, they will not give you the project. But basically, what I want to do is develop a new single photon source for telecom band. And what I look in the literature, there is nothing talking about it. If you change here the antimony concentration, you have a transition from a type 1 transition, direct band gap, to type 2 indirect band gap. But I cannot find anything about how this kind of transition, type 2, can influence in the entangled properties of the quantum dots. This will give you better results or worse results. This is one of the things that I think there's plenty of basic physics that we can learn something. And another thing that I want to do it's order quantum dots. If you want to make the real devices, it will be better that you know where is the quantum dots on the sample. And this is funny because I think it was this week that the group of Professor Stefan Hamstein from TU Berlin, they develop a single photon source, order single photon source based in these Busside structures. As you can see, he get this method, and I did not read the paper, but I saw some values, and they get really nice results with the approach that they use. And for the future, I want to also try to do something similar. Okay, I want to acknowledge the agents that is supporting this project, FAPESP, CNPq, KUTIA, and the Department of Applied Physics. I also want to thank you very much the people that are really helping me in these last years, like Márcio Daldin giving me support for the measurements that I will have to do in the future, like the optical measurements. Also, Professor Euclides helping a lot, talk with me and helping me. And the people from Unicamp that are not here. And thank you very much for your attention.
For the nice talk. So let's open for questions.
So thank you, Sam, for your very nice talk. So in one of your previous slides, you mentioned that to avoid some charge excitons, you excite with a 2 photon. Yeah, no, above. Yeah.
Here.
Yes. Okay, so you have a lot of charge excitons, and then when you excite with 2 photons, you have only neutral, exciton, and biexciton.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is this a gallium arsenide
Yes.
sample? So this gallium arsenide is a direct band gap. So a 2 photon in gallium arsenide excitation is a very, very improbable process because you have a direct band gap. So the virtual state is, the probability to create the virtual state is very low. And second, the process happens when you excite with 2 photons. So you create the electron in the valence band, and the electron. This is what I don't understand. What is the difference between if you excite with 1 photon and 2 photons? So because the carrier will be created in the valence band of the aluminum gallium arsenide. That's correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then drops to the quantum dot.
Yeah, but for the two photon excitation, basically what you do, you use this tunable laser, and you come here in the more or less here in the energy that you just excite two electrons to the conduction band. You give an energy enough for exciting just 2 electrons for the conduction band. Understand? In the case of above band,
When you what color? Let's see. What is the wavelength of excitation in the first spectrum?
For the first spectrum, generally you use
532.
Yeah, red laser or green laser.
In the second one is.
It's depend of where is your quantum dot, but it's now I don't remember.
Low, yeah?
But now I don't remember exactly, but it's basically here the energy. It's enough for creating to make the transition of the 2 electrons for the conduction band.
So you are resonant exciting, not
Yes.
2 photon. Okay, so now I got it.
It's resonant
Okay.
excitation.
Because 2 photon means that you are exciting below the gallium arsenide band gap.
No, I think as far as I know,
This is not
when they use they it's let's say that they say
resonant excitation.
yeah, I think they namely resonant 2 photon excitation for this kind of method.
But why
But
2 photon? You don't absorb 2 photons, just 1.
No, you have to
So
promote
you-
2 electrons from to develop.
No. Yeah, but you have enough photons that you can carrier, I mean, can charge the quantum dot with 2. But you are not exciting the conduction band of aluminum gallium arsenide. You are directing, put the carrier inside the dot. You
No,
understand what I mean?
no, I do not understood.
No, because you have the confining energy of the quantum dot, so
No, no, no. As far I have to admit, I'm not a specialist of these two photo excitations. I was not doing this kind of experiment, but as far as I understood, you have two electrons, you two photons, one by one electron and excited to the.
no, but you are exciting in resonance with the quantum dot.
Mhm.
I think this is the, and then you can only you can only charge create less charge inside the dot, because I think when you excite above the conduction band,
You come from the.
there is a lot of electrons coming inside the dot. Yeah,
Yes.
probably. Yeah.
I have to admit, I have to confirm, but
Because I'm too confused because absorption of 2 photon in the quantum gallium arsenide is very small. Yeah.
I,
Yeah. If this is below the band gap,
I will
you
check.
have to have a pulsed laser with a very high intensity to get. No, 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 no. What I'm saying, if you try to excite gallium arsenide below the band gap, I mean in the middle of the band gap, so you have to create a virtual state. Yeah. No, the aluminum gallium arsenide band gap, not the gallium arsenide band gap. Yeah, but not 2 photon. I mean, absorption. No, 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 no. What we call 2 photon is 1 photon and then another photon just at the same time. You understand? I mean, he's second order. No, 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 no. We don't need that. He's now we understand what he's doing. Yeah.
But I will check. I
Yeah,
will
no,
check.
no. Um, well, so when you mentioned that the indistinguishability of the samples, that is now 98% of this quantum dot, yes. So, I mean, you produce the entangled photons using the biexciton, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So this means that you have more biexon than exciton.
Mm-hmm.
So you have quantum dot 1 and quantum dot 2.
Yeah, this experiment they did like this. They build two devices. They have two cryostats and they put excited both in the same time and use the photons that was coming from the two separate.
But it's not, I mean, it's not the same quantum dot that you make a delay and then entangle the both. I mean, one and
No,
the
it's
other.
two photons from two different samples. They
So
want you to see
should be
how
exactly the same,
should be with
exactly the same wavelength. I mean, same
yes,
energy.
yes.
So
Same energy, same optical yeah, it's maybe for doing this kind of experiment they did the experiment with 3 hours, but to find the two dots they spend maybe 3 weeks.
okay. Sorry. No, no, I'm saying is, but you can do with the same dot, yeah?
Yeah, they can do also with the same dot.
And then you make a delay.
Make a delay, yes.
Okay, so okay, now I understand. So because it's very time consuming to find another exactly the same quantum dot and make another device.
But the idea I think of this work was like this, that you can have several samples that you can find quantos dots looks
And
similar.
how looks like, I mean, how should be the precision of the wavelength? mean, 5%, 10%? I mean, should be the same as a line width.
It should be, but I have to admit, I don't know. And the truth in general is also there is more problems in this because it's also hard to find the dots that have the same, for example, fine structure splitting, understand?
This is my next question. So you define structure splitting, yeah, that you mentioned. How is the in compare with the line width?
Depends of if you are a good grower. And in general, the line width of these quantum dots, I think it's around 3 or 4
Micro
microlevel. But you can grow these quantum dots with, let's say, 2 point. You see the distribution
No,
was.
yeah, but the when you mention the fine structure,
Mhm.
what this means that you have some structure in the line, no?
That the splitting of this neutral exciton level, if you do a polarization map
Yes.
in function of energy, you will see that this small splitting here, where is here? This small splitting here, it's what we call the fine structure splitting of the neutral exciton. This is coming from the confinement. If you have
Yeah, I
a
understand, but I
asymmetric
understand.
confinement, this is the energy level we're splitting in two lines, in two levels. And you can measure this by polarization measurements. And this will
But
influence
this is due to the the geometry or
to the geometry. In the case of gallium arsenide, it's because of the symmetry. If you have elongate quantum dots nanoholes, this final structure will increase. But for indium arsenide quantum dots, you have several things that can influence the fine structure splitting, like strain, the indium concentration,
I understand, but
size.
with strain free, so the size will change. I thought the size will only change the position, not
No,
the fine structure.
no, the symmetry, because you are, it's the symmetry of the confined potential, and this is influencing the fine structure splitting.
Oh, okay. We can discuss later. So
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much. Great overview. I return to the origin. Quite a time ago at our institute in Dresden, there were 3 scientists who were very much enthusiastic in this field. And one of them was Armando Rastelli, who became a professor in Linz. And I'm happy to see the very successful development there. Another one, Christian Denecke, who is, as far as I understand, in Campinas.
Mhm.
And the third was Fading, who is now professor in
Hanover.
And I remember that from that time, these 2 parameters, G2 and fidelity, were the goal of very, very intensive search, how to increase them. Because all those nice applications, which you also are looking for, they depend on the values of these parameters. You showed what was, I would say, some years ago. I remember maybe 4 or 5 years ago. My question is, are you interested in further progress in this direction? And which values are needed in order to have sustainable applications, for example, for communication or cryptography or some other modern ways of application. Please tell us
You know,
what would be your goal. Thank you.
my goal is to have an ideal single photon source that have fidelity 100%, single photon purity 0, but it is not possible. Well, but in the way that is now, it's already useful for quantum key distribution. Especially, you see, the Quandela and SpareQuant are already selling single photon source, and they dots that they have is not ideal, understand? But there is a lot of going on just to increase 1% is already making a lot of difference. Don't ask me how it's this difference, but the idea is increasing even more because, for example, this is the ideal single photon sources that they want to build up. A quantum dot inside a Bull-side structure, inside a piezoelectric that you can also to manipulate the wavelength and to manipulate the final structure splitting. And with this kind of approach, they can put this small final structure splitting that is already give you entangle ready photons to 0. And with this 0, you can also increase the fidelity to values more than, let's say, 99% that we have before. But I think they are trying to do, they want to try to get the ideal single photon source. Because if it's not ideal, it will be never ideal. Né? But if you have some small values yet, you still have errors inside these quantum communication protocols. As much as you improve, you decrease the errors. But what's the limit? I have to admit, I don't know.
Any more questions?
Thank you. Just a, I think, very small question. Does the devices have some typical like time to be used? I mean, expiry date, something like that.
Sorry, I did not understood. The devices are
like the degradation time for the devices that are now produced.
like how long these devices will survive.
Yeah.
I have
Any information about the degradation of their parameters?
I don't know. I think they should stay long because one of the single photon sources is around, I believe, 200,000 euros. And if you buy a source for 2,100 euros, you expect that it will survive for a long time.
There should be a correlation between the price and the
No, yeah. In general, I think for the I have to admit I never saw a real device from Quandela, from SpareQuantum, but I believe it's keep on the vacuum all the time. But in general, they encapsulate this kind of quantum dots. And as far as I know, when you have a thick layer on the top of these quantum dots, it can survive for a few years. At least the samples that I measure samples with gallium arsenide. Like the samples that I was growing, I was checking samples of 7 years old and was completely fine, understand? And was in the air, was not in vacuum. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's a LED. Oh, sorry, it's a like I think like a LED. So the lifetime, it's in principle is if there's no degradation of the contacts, the ohmic contacts in the P and I and junction, you can for 10,000 or more hours, yeah, for a real LED or a real semiconductor laser. I think this is the only thing I think. Oh, of course, if there's no, but I think they are keeping a cryo state because it's necessary to run at low temperature.
Yes.
So temperature is not the problem. The problem, I think, is the diffusion of the elements from the contact to inside the sample that will degrade the contacts, and then normal. It's a normal
device, né?
LED semiconductor device, 10,000, 20,000 hours, something like that. Yeah.
The Quandela one.
Hello, thank you very much for this wonderful talk on this topic. I think there was a slide in number 28 or something like that. I think there was a plan view of that maybe that 27 maybe
Which one? This one?
27, that one, yes.
27. Okay, this
That
the,
one.
the image setup.
Can you
Yeah.
put it in big? Maybe not this one. There were some other ones because I think I saw kind of the dots, and around the dots there was
I think it means
another structure, very faint, that looked like a
no,
ring.
no,
Ring obsessed.
I know what Will means. I think it's the image from this one. I think it's this one.
Yes, exactly. You see the two big dots in the middle. There is that an artifact or
I think
first
that
of all, what is that image? Image number B is a Plan View TM, SEM.
no, this is the image setup from a CMOS camera illuminated by a blue LED. It's the same the setup that you show that I was in before. It's just the same.
So that is light.
Yeah, that is light. It's the emission from by when you excite with a blue LED. Looking for just a CMOS camera. But you are correct. It looks like there's some rings. I asked my friend that they do this kind of measurements. Because this is just the only purpose of doing these images is for localize the quantum dots, understand? To save the position to make the buside structure. I asked him, he said, I don't know what was, but I think it comes from some artifacts in the lens that we are using.
Maybe it's an artifact or it's just something real. Thank you. And
Could be.
diffraction, no? Yes, I think it's diffraction.
He tried to solve this, but he not managed to improve.
And well, I want to comment on if you are interested in shifting to 1.5 wavelength.
Yeah,
Telecom
I will be rich
using
with
dot-
this.
We had a. I'm checking my resume. We had in 2005 a paper on exactly 1.6 micron emission of indium gallium arsenide quantum dots capped with gallium arsenide and timonide. I don't know. Maybe there is something very interesting for you. I don't know. I don't remember very well.
I will check. But the problem is that the quality of it long time ago was really bad for this telecom.
Probably.
This was the reason that people was stopping doing this, understand? And the last years, like from Dresden, they start to work with this gallium arsenide quantum dots, and because there's no strain, they saw that the optical quality improved a lot for the final structure splitting and for the rest of it, like also for the lifetime that's shorter. And this is the reason that they are pushing for this local droplet, you understand?
Okay. Well, by the way, the name of the main author of this publication is Ripalda, just in case.
Ripalda.
I'll send it to you later. Thank you very much.
But there is also already some groups in USA that are doing also this with Antimon.
In my presentation, I showed work from the group from Toshiba that was working on indium arsenide dots in indium phosphide, also aiming at 1.55 micron. How do you think you can compare to them? And have you given that a thought?
There was this Transkastranov, no?
No, droplet. I
Droplet.
showed you cross-section STM images of that. And,
I don't know the result that they have, but most probably the indistinguishability or the final structure splitting was not so ideal for.
I can't give you those numbers from the top of my head, but they were aiming really for good stuff. And
I have to check, but it's I met this woman. What was her name? Now she's in KIT. That was responsible for in Toshiba for these experiments. What's her name? No, it was another woman. But yes, I already.
Okay, any more questions? So if not, let's thank Simon again. Thank you, Simon.